You keep making the same decision. Different room, different year, different face across the table, but somehow the ending always tastes the same. And there's a question you've never said out loud, not even to yourself. Why does this keep happening to me? Here's something almost no one will tell you. The event that hurt you, the silence at the dinner table, the door that slammed, the love that showed up late or not at all, that event is over. It ended years ago, but something it left behind is not over. It's still pulling on you right now in this exact moment, the same way light keeps arriving from a star that already died. Astronomers see this all the time. A star can collapse, go dark, stop existing, and yet its light keeps traveling toward Earth for years, sometimes centuries after the star itself is gone. People look up, see a point of light, and think that star is still burning. It isn't. They're looking at a memory wearing the disguise of the present. That's what a childhood wound does to a grown life. The moment is dead, but its gravity isn't. And gravity doesn't need a living source to keep bending everything that orbits near it. Think about what you do when someone gets too close. Think about why you flinch at certain tones of voice, why certain silences feel like danger, why you over-explain yourself to people who never asked you to. None of that is random. You're not broken, you're orbiting. You built your whole adult life in a careful loop around a wound that stopped speaking years ago, and you never noticed because gravity doesn't announce itself. It just bends the path. And here's the part that should unsettle you a little. Every day you keep orbiting that dead star without naming it, you reinforce the orbit. The pattern doesn't loosen on its own. It tightens. The same relationship dynamic repeats. The same fear of being left repeats. The same inner voice, not good enough, too much, unwanted, repeats, dressed in new circumstances but speaking with the same old mouth. Something was already set in motion a long time ago, and unless its gravity is interrupted, it keeps pulling. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's not about reopening old accusations or staying stuck replaying what happened. This is about something far more practical and far more sacred. Understanding why you keep choosing what you keep choosing, and discovering that there is a force strong enough to break the orbit completely. So let's go back to the beginning, because the wound was never the real problem. The real problem was what the wound taught you to believe. When a child is wounded through neglect, harsh words, absence, rejection, instability, the child's mind doesn't conclude that person failed me. A child's mind concludes something far more dangerous. I am the kind of person this happens to. That belief gets buried so deep it stops feeling like a belief at all. It starts feeling like identity. And identity is the strongest gravitational field there is. Researchers who study early attachment describe something almost identical without ever using the word gravity. They say a child's nervous system calibrates itself around whatever relationship it has access to, safe or unsafe, consistent or unpredictable. The body keeps that calibration long after the original relationship is gone. You don't remember deciding to flinch at raised voices. You don't remember choosing to read silence as rejection. The body decided before the mind was even old enough to argue. That's not weakness. That's a nervous system that adapted perfectly to survive a gravitational field that no longer exists. This is where most healing advice stops short. It tells you to let go of the past, as if gravity can be dismissed by willpower. But you cannot outthink a gravitational field. You cannot simply decide your way out of an orbit. You need a stronger source of gravity to be introduced, something massive enough to bend your trajectory in the opposite direction. Notice what happens, though, the moment you try to drift away from that orbit on your own. The pull gets stronger, not weaker. You set a boundary and guilt pulls you back. You try to trust someone new and suspicion pulls you back. You try to rest and the old voice insists you haven't earned it yet. This is the part nobody warns you about. The closer you get to breaking free, the more violently the old gravity reasserts itself. It's not proof that you're failing. It's proof that you're finally close enough to the edge of the field for it to notice. And this is where the wound meets something that changes everything. Scripture describes God in a strange, specific way, not as a distant observer of pain, but as the one who heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Not metaphorically, not someday. Present tense, ongoing action, binding right now what was torn open back then. And there's another description that fits even more precisely into what we've been talking about. God is called the Father of lights, the one in whom there is no shifting shadow. No inconsistency, no light that arrives and then goes dark, no love that's bright one day and gone the next, the way human love sometimes was for you. Do you see what that means against the backdrop of a dead star still pulling at your orbit? You spent your life being shaped by a light source that already burned out, a love that ended, a presence that left, an approval that was never actually stable to begin with. And the offer being made to you isn't try harder to escape the orbit. The offer is a new center of gravity, one that doesn't flicker. One that doesn't go dark when you make a mistake, raise your voice, or fail to be perfect enough to earn it. This is the part where most people brace for guilt, but listen carefully, there is no guilt in this. There's only a return. Scripture says you didn't receive a spirit that keeps you orbiting fear like a slave circling the same old patterns. You received the spirit of adoption, the right to call this God Father, not landlord, not judge, not a distant authority keeping score. Father. The very thing the original wound denied you is the very thing being restored, except this time the source cannot collapse, cannot leave the room, cannot run out of light. There's a strange comfort hidden in one more detail of how stars behave. Astronomers say that even a dying star in its final moments releases its brightest light right before collapsing into darkness, one last burst and then nothing. Maybe that's what your childhood felt like. A flicker of love right before the door closed, a moment of being chosen right before being left. You've spent years trying to recreate that one bright burst, mistaking it for proof the star was good, when really it was already collapsing the whole time. You don't have to keep chasing that flicker anymore. And here's where it gets almost impossible to put into words. When a planet's orbit shifts to a new gravitational center, it doesn't erase its history. It doesn't pretend the old star never existed. But its path is no longer dictated by something dead. The same person, the same memories, the same scars, but a completely different trajectory going forward. Scripture calls this becoming a new creation, not because the past is erased, but because the gravity controlling the future has changed hands. Isaiah described it as receiving beauty instead of ashes, not the absence of fire, but something genuinely new built from what the fire left behind. This means the trigger you flinch at, the relationship pattern you keep repeating, the inner voice whispering not enough, none of that has to remain the center of your orbit. It can become exactly what it actually is, light from something that already ended. You're allowed to acknowledge it without continuing to organize your whole life around it. So here is the quiet, unsettling question this leaves you with. If the wound is dead light, if the thing pulling at your decisions has no living power left except the power you keep giving it by orbiting it, what would your life look like the moment you let a new center hold you instead? Not perfect, not instantly fixed. Old gravity doesn't release its grip in a single moment. It loosens gradually, the way an orbit widens before it finally breaks free. But no longer circling something that can't love you back because it's not even there anymore. That shift doesn't happen by accident, and it rarely happens all at once. It happens the moment you start naming the orbit out loud, the moment you stop mistaking old gravity for present truth, and the moment you let yourself be held by a Father whose light has never once gone dark. Perfect love, Scripture says, casting out the very fear that's kept you circling for so long. You've been looking up at a star for a long time, calling it home. It's time to find out what it feels like to finally orbit something alive.